to a brand new episode of Behind the Sounds. I'm super excited to be joined today by Lindsay Ell. Thank you so much for being here. It's such a pleasure to chat with you. How are you?
Leah, it is such a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Yeah, so good. Super excited. I know you have had like such a busy few months, few years. How has it been? Obviously previous to the start of this year, everything was a little bit shut down, but you seem to just be so busy. How has it been? Are you enjoying it, being back on the road and out there again?
Yeah, I have been so grateful. I've been so grateful for things opening up again and live shows being a thing again in front of human beings. It has been obviously an art that has been sad to have said goodbye to over the past couple of years. So I'm very happy to welcome that back into real life and perform in front of smiling faces again. That has felt so good.
Yeah, and it was as you say, like it's such a shame because it was obviously an industry that was affected so much. But I love talking about. I find that during that pandemic, actually, it was an industry that, in a sense, really benefited. Do you think, because obviously music's such a healer, do you think that, your music and your fans and your relationship with your fans benefited from that kind of period of downtime?
Yeah, I think that as humans, we all benefited a little bit. If we can really dig deep down over the past couple of years, obviously a lot of us have been navigating so many ups and downs for so many different reasons, but I think that the past couple of years have given us all a chance to sort of look back and evaluate what's going on in our lives and and appreciate the things that maybe we have taken for granted in the past, and maybe look at our jobs or our lives and get more efficient at how we do our jobs or how much time we spend doing our jobs. And maybe we have found places in our day that we can spend more time with our loved ones or our family or friends. And so I think that over the past couple of years, hopefully we've found a number of ways to improve our lives and just be more grateful for the things that we do have in our lives. And so I'm very grateful for the past couple of years. I think that as an artist who used to be on the road 235 days a year, or 235 shows a year, or 280 days we would spend on the year, I just wasn't home a lot. And we were moving so fast that then to go 100 miles an hour down to zero, it just felt like everything came to a crashing halt. And then I was quarantined in a house by myself in four walls for 100 days, where I didn't literally interact with one human, let alone the past couple years, just living, a completely different life as everyone has. And as a creative and as a songwriter, was able to really feel emotions in a whole new way. And, shortly into the pandemic, releasing my second album, Heart Theory, was a vastly emotional process, let alone writing a record that was probably one of the most vulnerable projects I've ever released to this point. And yet also releasing a project that we had all of these crazy things planned and we weren't able to do any of them because we were in the middle of a global pandemic. And then feeling the wonderful benefits of technology and how incredible it is that you can release music and it can be heard and seen and felt and enjoyed around the world because of it, was something that was so cool to really live and feel. And yet, it's one thing to write songs as a songwriter and then record them, but then to release a record like Heart Theory that I felt like was my musical diary top to bottom, and was an album I just wanted fans to be able to listen to and feel my process as I slowly unraveled each track. I mean, I wrote that record in order for a reason. And so I'm so grateful for the past couple years. I've learned so much about myself, and I feel like today show up as a more grateful, appreciative person because of it.
I absolutely love that. I think, and what you're saying as well, so many people released music in the pandemic that, were big, emotional, vulnerable projects, but actually, in a sense, it was kind of nice that it couldn't go anywhere, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It just meant so much more. And I absolutely love that. And we'll talk a little bit about heart theory later. But I want to go, like, I love to talk about, like, in childhood, how people got into music, because one of the things, and again, we'll speak about it a lot, is as much as you're an incredible singer and songwriter, you are one of the most talented musicians in country music. You're very known for it. Where does that come from? How young did you start playing music?
Music was always a part of my life ever since I was a little girl. I was singing ever since I could talk. I started playing piano as my first instrument when I was 6 years old, and then picked up the guitar when I was 8 because it was a lot cooler to play Shania Twain songs compared to classical concerto number whatever when I'm 8 years old. And and so I just was surrounded by instruments all the time. My parents or my older brother, none of them do music professionally, but everybody in my family plays an instrument. And so around holidays or family get-togethers, there was always lots of music happening and family jam sessions. And when I was a little girl, I would go to bluegrass camps with my dad and follow my dad and all of his friends around, and we just play fiddle tunes till 3 in the morning. And I was just really raised by a very musically rich culture around me. And I started playing, music live at a really young age. I started writing songs and playing shows when I was 10 years old. And so it just was like a way of life for me. Other kids had pretty busy social lives throughout school and being teenagers, and I would just play shows. I had friends in school, but I really would tour a lot, and that was sort of my social life in a way, or lack thereof social life. But yeah, music was just my life and my language. And I think it was when I was around 15 or 16, I was playing so much at that point. Like, gigging was definitely a part of my life that it just made sense that, oh, this is a really good way to live life. And how crazy would it be if I turned this into my job? Like, what? So from a really young age, it was just part of my day to day. It was in my blood. It was in my veins.
Yeah, it sounds like it is. And obviously, being that young and gigging a lot, was it always just fun, or did you feel a lot of pressure? Because that is a really young age to kind of be going out and, trying to impress people and all that. But did you just love
Yeah.
it?
The pressure didn't come till later in life. Like, when I said, because I started touring and playing music since I was a little, music was always just so fun. There was nothing else that would quite tap into that part of my brain of just anything is possible and this is amazing. And as a guitar player, I mean, I still am just totally overtaken by curiosity of what else could I play and how cool could this sound, and what other guitar player pedals could I plug into other guitar pedals to make cool sounds. And like that part of my brain is still just completely overwhelmed with curiosity, which I hope that never leaves. I was touring with Buddy Guy when I was 18, and seeing a man who was, in his early 70s at that point, touring still with the charisma of like a 5-year-old boy at times, I was like, that is the spark of life that I never want to leave. And I think music has always really embraced that part of me. I obviously grew up playing country music and bluegrass music with my dad when I was little, but when I turned 13, I started working with a guy by the name of Randy Bachman from this band called BTO and the Guess Who. And if you've ever heard of songs like These Eyes or American Woman or Baby, you just ain't seen nothing yet, like, he came from the classic rock world. And so as a musician, I started working with Randy and would watch him play like all these crazy jazz chords up and down the neck of the guitar. And I would just sit there as a little girl being like, Randy, what's that? That's so cool. And so Randy really opened up my brain and my eyes to the world of rock guitar and jazz and blues that as a musician gave me a completely new vocabulary to pull from. And sort of from when I was 13 to 20, I didn't listen to anything but that kind of music. And I just dove deep into those worlds. And, you know, then shortly after that, moving to Nashville, it brought me back to my country roots as a songwriter. But I just had all of these other influences that I could pull from. In terms of, you know, a sonic space of music. And, you know, I've never really looked at music as it should be one genre anyways. I think that as humans, we just listen to music because it's good music and it makes us feel things. And we listen to songs that make us connect to things in our own lives. And so I think from a very early age, I've just been in a melting pot from day one of how I learned music and took it into my bones, and then eventually started playing. And so, yeah, it's always just been from a place of something that's brought me so much joy, and also something that doesn't need to be categorized within boundary lines.
I'm such an advocate of that, because, and I think also as a fan, you can hear it in your music. And actually, it's so much more interesting as a fan and as a music fan to hear different genres in people's records, which you can with yours. What I want to know is, obviously, when you kind of discover you want to do music full time, you're like, right, I'm going to make a career out of this. Obviously, you say you play a lot of country and bluegrass with your dad, but why did you decide Nashville was the place to go and to pursue your career?
You know, I always wanted to move to the States to sign a record deal. It was definitely on my bucket list of dreams ever since I was a little. And I went to Los Angeles first to write with a bunch of songwriters there. And I remember just trying to find my clique and my people there. And it's just such a big city that I was so young at the time. And I remember somebody saying, you know, I think you'd really like Nashville. I think you should check it out. And I knew like one person's name on a piece of paper when I first came to town, and had my guitar in my back when I walked off the plane. And I just remember coming to Nashville that first time feeling so welcomed. I felt like it felt like home, like Canada, you know, everybody was just so friendly, and that Southern hospitality thing. And they'd be like, come on over to the house after and we'll cook you dinner and we'll have a jam session. And I was like, what is this place? Like, this place is crazy. Who are these people? Why are they being so nice to me? It was very different from LA in that respect. And so I just felt so at home, and so drawn to Nashville. And at the time, obviously, I was still a Canadian, so I didn't have a visa and I didn't have any way of making money. And so I would go back and forth between Calgary, where I lived, and Nashville every 2 weeks. I was, you know, taking care of myself. And so I was waiting tables. I was going to school at the time, and I was gigging on the weekends to make enough money to buy a plane ticket to go down to Nashville to write songs for 2 weeks, where then I would try to meet as many people as I could. I would write triples, which we call that in town, is basically you write 3 songs a day. So you write one from like 10 to 2, you write another one from 3 to 6, you write another one from 7 to 10. And then I'd go to writers' rounds at night, watching these incredible songwriters play these massive hit songs that you're like, whoa, that person wrote that song. That's insane. And then I'd go up to them after this writer round and be like, hey, my name's Lindsay. Will you write a song with me? And so at that point, I was just like, I know nobody in this town. I'm starting my life over in a brand new country. Like, I need to meet people. And it was the only way I knew how to do that. And so I would go down to Nashville and book myself solid for 2 weeks, then fly back to Calgary and work and play shows and go to school and write midterms and do all the things to make enough money to buy a plane ticket to go back down to Nashville. And I did that for about a year and a half, going back and forth and back and forth, just trying to meet enough people to make ends meet and survive, basically, and essentially get my first visa to be able to move down to the States full time. And once I was able to do that, I just felt like, okay, things were away to the races. Like, mom and dad, I am ready to be a rock star. This is all happening and coming together. And so shortly after that, when I finally got my first visa, I signed my first record deal. And now, gosh, it it feels like yesterday.
That's amazing. I cannot believe you did that. I mean, obviously it paid off well, but what dedication to be able to do that. And I love that you just go up to people at writers' rounds. Do you get people asking you that now? You know, all these years later, do you get people coming up to you after shows and being like, will you write a song with me?
Yes, Leah, it is crazy to like see how life comes full circle in so many ways. I mean, even when I think back to when I was 8 years old, singing into the mirror with like a plastic microphone my mom got me from the dollar store, like wanting to be Shania Twain. And now, fast forward years later, I am opening up for Shania Twain later this year. It's just wild how life has these like circular ways of coming around. And yeah, I do have people come up to me to say those things, or say, Lindsay, you've inspired me to start learning how to play the guitar. And it's just wild. It's wild. And if anything, if I have learned anything being in this industry, I mean, knowing like Shania and Sheryl Crow and Bonnie Raitt and all these incredible musicians who have inspired me, like if they are passing the torch, I just take that as like a full responsibility of, okay, now I need to inspire the next generation of artists who will then get the torch passed to them, and then they will inspire the generation after that. And so it's almost just like I feel the onus to write and record really great music. Like all of that just makes me feel, okay, you have a job to do, and you cannot hold that torch lightly.
Mm-hmm. And well, you're doing a very, very good job of it. I absolutely love that. And I think particularly obviously women in country music and women in music in general. And I love that you mentioned obviously Shania and Sheryl Crow, because these are people that really did, you know, make way as musician singers as well, you know.
Yes.
Talking of the music and of all this incredible things you've done, fast forward a couple of years, I'm sure from those stories, but your debut kind of albums and EPs all came out, and it seemed, as a fan perspective, quite a whirlwind, that it just all of a sudden you were everywhere, obviously with the project. Was that experience, did it seem like a whirlwind kind of releasing it, or did it seem like a long time coming?
Both in the same moment. For sure, more of a whirlwind than anything. I remember, yeah, signing my first record deal and then getting to release song after song after song, and then finally getting to release my first album. The project was like, whoa, what is happening? This is the moment I've been waiting for. And then to realize that, you know, as human beings on this planet who like to set goals and achieve and do all the things and be control freaks and all of the things that I define my crazy brain as, you get to do something like that has been highly anticipated and something you have waited for so long, and then it only opens up a door to another room of 10 more doors that you got to figure out how to then strategize and work through and figure out how to open those doors, which is, I guess, just a motivating thing to keep us on our feet and always working towards the next thing. But yeah, getting to release the project, my first album, was like such a cool thing to finally be able to do and embrace and release a full statement to the world. You know, it wasn't just like a snippet of a song or a snippet of a song or a snippet of a song. It was like, here is a record, an album. And it just, you know, laid the groundwork to then being able to release Heart Theory, and now working on my third album, being able to release that. And so it's a beautiful thing that I think, while, you know, our world in a lot of ways is moving to this more music more quickly, and like a single world, perhaps. Some of my favorite artists are still releasing albums, which are my favorite thing, because it seems like you get, you know, not just a snippet or a few sentences, but you get the full chapter or the full novel at once.
I'm the same. I am one of these people that I'm an album person, you know.
Yes.
I love single, I love listening to the radio, but give me an album. And I always
with
say,
you, girl.
Everything sounds better on vinyl, because it's how it's meant to be played, you know, top to bottom.
Yeah.
In the midst of all that, something I have to talk about is obviously you say it opened doors for you. Something you did after your first album was released was the Continuum project, which, as a John Mayer super fan, as many people are, what a thing to do. What was it the fans that encouraged you to do that? Am I right?
So it was actually the producer of my first album, Christian Bush, from a little band called Sugarland, if people are familiar with them. Christian is just so brilliant. He is a mastermind. And I actually recorded the Continuum project before I even recorded the project.
Wow.
It was a sort of homework assignment that he gave me, because I was going in the studio, I was writing a lot, and I was just not knowing exactly how I wanted the project, before I even knew it was going to be called the project, to sound. And so he was like, Lindsay, what's your favorite album of all time? And I was like, easy, Continuum by John Mayer. It's like the best record. And he was like, perfect. I want you to go record the whole thing. And then I was like, what? And he said, yeah, I want you to record the whole record, top to bottom, play every instrument, sit in your little hole in the office studio and record the whole thing. Cause I'm kind of a studio nerd and I like play a whole bunch of instruments, and I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. That sounds easy. I know this record so much, I can sing every part on that record. And so I didn't necessarily know what I was jumping into at that point, but I worked every single day, like 7 a.m. till 3 a.m. every day, like working on that record. And it didn't even scratch the surface to what I wanted to do in terms of jumping into a project like that. But it was essentially intended as a homework assignment for me to just take a look of that record under a magnifying glass. Like I knew that record so much, and I knew that album so much, those songs, but to study it to the point where then you can recreate it and re-record it, that's like a different level of studying. Mm-hmm. And so even that project alone was just a deeper understanding of why you love what you love. You know, it's like when you love a certain meal that you're eating, and then you figure out what are the ingredients and how to make that meal, like that is a different understanding of that process than just eating it. And so that's kind of what the Continuum project was to me. And it was never intended to be released. Like I didn't perfect things. I was just learning them and then, you know, replaying it in the space of me learning it. And then after talking about it a little bit, when the project did come out as sort of the road of how we got there, fans started asking about it. And so that's where fans were like, we want to hear this. We want to hear this. And then I look at Christian, I'm like, this was never intended to come out. And he was like, it's all good. It's so cool because it's like an interpretation from your perspective, and nothing would ever top John's version of Continuum because it is the ultimate perfection. But if anything, we muted all of my drum tracks that I tirelessly went and programmed, which you can never fully program Steve Jordan as a drummer because he's just such a special drummer as who he is. But I tried. Like there were some fills that took me hours. Like one bar took me hours figuring out what he was doing. And yet Christian was like, no, we should mute all the drums and make this be like a cool, like organic raw version of Continuum. And so I was like, okay. But releasing that project was just so rewarding. And it was amazing to be able to just speak to how much I've been influenced from John's writing and who he is as an artist and as a songwriter. And then, you know, fast forward years later to be able to collaborate with him a little bit. And he's just been so gracious and wonderful. And when he heard the Continuum project, he was like, thank you so much for recording an album. Like nobody had ever done that for me before. And I just think it's so cool. And so he's just been so wonderful and supportive. And then this past a few months ago, he was recording a commercial for his brand new guitar that he's been working on with PRS, the Silver Sky SE. And he called a few artists to be a part of this commercial for the guitar. And he only called a handful of artists. And I was on that list and I was like, this is wild. Like, again, another example of how life comes in these full circle moments. And just, he's such an artist that I truly look up to. And then to, you know, show up that day and play guitar in front of him for 45 minutes, I was like, what makes me worthy of this moment? I'm just so grateful to John. He's such a cool dude and cool person, and arguably one of the best musicians and songwriters of our time, I think, personally. And so so the Continuum project was something that I just learned so much from, and I'm really grateful for having done and be able to show the world a little bit of it.
I love that. And I love that it's come full circle in such a good way. I think, and I'm sure you probably felt the same, but even as a fan of that record, which, as you say, one of the greatest records of all time, when you hear that someone's kind of like going to cover the whole thing, you're a bit like, oh, okay, that's risky. Was there a part of you that didn't want to put it out because of what potential reaction could be? Obviously, it was
100%. Yes. I was like, Christian Bush, I am going to get chastised for like recording a whole record. Somebody's like full blood, sweat, and tears that they have created in such a perfect way. And, you know, this snapshot of their life. And I am just taking it and like putting my version out there unto the world. Like, it's one thing to cover one song, but to do a full album is very ballsy. And it was something that I was nervous about for sure, but just the whole story around it and what I learned from it was just too precious to not be able to share.
I love that. And yeah, and it obviously paid off very well. And I love, and it also from hearing it, you know, with a female voice is also one of them things that I think makes a massive difference. And then talking of obviously big albums, putting your heart and soul into it, fast forward a few years to Heart Theory, which we spoke about a little bit earlier. Obviously you said, you know, such a vulnerable personal album. And I think from someone who is just a music fan, it's a record that you can hear that, and and as I just said, I listen every time an album comes out, I listen top to bottom, and I love that you say, you know, you put it in that order for a reason, because that's how they're meant to be. Released it at a very kind of unknowing time, obviously with the pandemic and everything, but leading up to that record, what did you want to come out of it?
Yeah, I was so excited about releasing Heart Theory. This album meant so much to me. And thank you for saying that. Yeah, I do feel like there are a lot of people left in the world who love to listen to full albums and full projects. And it was really important to me to release a project that was very cohesive and very intentional about every aspect of it. I wrote this record to anybody who is struggling, navigating through a difficult time in their life, whether that's a breakup, losing a job, moving across the country, losing a loved one, whatever it may be, going through a global pandemic. You know, it was written around that process. You know, there's so many different ways of talking about that process. There's this thing called the 7 stages of grief that basically talks about, as humans on this planet, we need to go through different emotions to fully break down a situation, understand it, and appreciate it for what it is. And so there is the shock, there is the denial, there is the anger, there is the depression, there is the questioning, then there is the appreciation and the gratitude and the acceptance of it, being able to fully understand it and then move on and be a stronger, wiser, more grateful person because of it. And Heart Theory speaks to all of that. It starts in the place of shock and it ends in a place of acceptance. And through that, I was able to talk about my story as a little girl, you know, get to a place that was so vulnerable, talking about being a survivor and being sexually assaulted when I was a little girl, which is nothing I've ever shared and ever really wanted to talk about, because I didn't want to be one of these artists who just talked about things to get attention. But I was doing work with an organization in the States at that time called Youth for Tomorrow, and they dealt with kids who were aged 12 to 18 who had been victims of sexual assault or domestic abuse or sex trafficking, and very difficult things to talk about, very difficult things to write songs about. Mm-hmm. And yet I was just so inspired from working with these kids. I would sit in these conference rooms listening to, you know, 12-year-old little girls talk about these horrific things that they've been through with so much light in their eyes and light in their heart. And I'm like, if this 12-year-old little girl can talk about this and inspire me, then who am I to say that I am like not talking about my story or sharing part of what makes me me, thinking that it won't have an impact on somebody. And maybe somebody needs to hear that message in order to then pass on their inspiration to somebody else.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, it's time to write about this. And so I wrote a song called Make You on Heart Theory, which has probably been one of the most vulnerable things that I've ever talked about in a song, and yet has awoken this thing in me as a writer that I am so grateful for. And I feel like has changed the way I write songs for the rest of my life. And it's been a scary process to release a record like Heart Theory, and something that I am really grateful for. Just being able to connect with people in that way, being able to get thousands of DMs from fans after releasing it, being like, thank you for writing this music. I'm now wanting to share my story with other people, or wanting to reach out and get help. And I've never felt this way, or I've just been too scared before. And I'm like, if there is anything about music, that is the reason. That is the reason why I think that we listen to music as human beings on this planet, to connect, to feel things, to process our emotions that we aren't able to fully articulate ourselves sometimes. So we put on a song that helps us feel it, and listen to lyrics that help us speak it, or put it into words when it just feels like it's too much. It's like too much joy or too much sadness or too much pain to communicate. Music has this universal language to be able to communicate it. It's why I'm so obsessed about like incredible songwriters who write songs in the perfect way, like listening to Joni Mitchell or Carole King, like, and be like, whoa, they wrote that in a song. Like, they wrote those lyrics, which is mind baffling. And so, yeah, Heart Theory was just like the peeling of that next layer of the onion of being like, this is who I am, and this is what I want to say, and this is how I want to connect to my fans, and maybe people who've never heard of me ever in their life, and maybe they can listen to a song and connect to it and be like, oh yeah, I know what that is. I know what that feels like. I've been there before. Because I think that that's the point of music.
Yeah, I am in so much agreement there. And I think, you know, as someone who cannot sing a tune and couldn't write a song for the life of them, it's so important and so great that people write those songs for us, which I'm sure you're well, of course you did. And obviously you didn't get to kind of tour the record straight off the bat because of the global pandemic. Did you, obviously 2 years later, playing the songs now, is it kind of a really emotional experience? Because I say you put your heart and soul, and they're heavy songs in a good way, some of them, of course. What's it like playing them live, and also playing them kind of 2 years after you started to share them?
Leah, it feels so special to be able to bring this music to life. You know, I think the most incredible thing about a great song is it doesn't even matter when you sing it, because you can, or when you hear it, you can tap into that emotion. And if it's something that you've lived, it's like, oh yeah, I'm there. If it happened years ago, I am right there right now. And so being able to tour this record live now, it's so cool. I mean, I'm brought back to where I was 2 years ago and 3 years ago, and finally getting to bring this music to fans around the world. You know, like I said earlier, being able to see that this music made it across the world to them, and they know the lyrics to these songs, which is just mind baffling. And I've never played this record in this town before, and yet they're singing along. Like, what is this? This is crazy. So I'm so excited. I'm so excited to get back to the UK for the first time since the pandemic. I'm so excited to be on tour with the Cadillac 3 and playing the Long Road Fest. It is going to be a time long welcoming, and I'm just so excited to be able to bring this music to life over there.
I can't wait to hear it, and I know there's a lot of people that are in the same boat. Very quickly, because we're going to have to wrap up relatively soon, but I want to talk about, there is new music coming, that you're working on a third album. You have a single that came out in April. I wrote this down because I remember seeing it when you posted about it on Instagram, and I was like, that's how so many people are feeling right now. And you posted with the single, if you ever feel like you've fallen behind in life, this is for you, this song, and it's called Right on Time. Is that a hint to what the theme of the next record is going to be? What can you tell us?
Yes, Leah, thank you for asking about that. I feel like Right on Time is my theme song right now. I feel like this is something that I am truly living, and I hope that a lot of people who hear this song can connect to what this message is. Shortly after I turned 30, it felt like all of my friends were getting married and having babies and checking all of these life boxes that I was nowhere near close ready to check yet. And I was like, am I falling behind? Am I living life the wrong way? What am I missing here as I'm on the road 280 days a year or whatever? And I just wanted to write a song. It was so important to me to write something with a message of saying, no. We are all writing our own story. We are the playwrights to our own plays. We are letting things happen in our life in the time that they should. And we should not be comparing ourselves to someone else's path, because that's their path. And that is the trajectory that they're on. And we don't want that trajectory. We want our own. And whatever that means, if you do something like 5 years after or 5 years before, who you're seeing on social media, or listening to societal pressures, or listening to friends and family pressures, it's all there. And sometimes it's all there so much that it's happening more in our subconscious brain than our conscious brain. And we don't even realize like the strong effects that it has on us in our day-to-day lives. And I think that it's just important to remember that we're doing this right on time, that we should. Like, everything in our life is happening right on time, as it should. And specifically to women, I think that this song, can connect to anybody, but specifically to women, because I feel like we feel that societal pressure far more than anybody else. Hitting the right time in our life, the time to be beautiful, the time to maybe be a mother, the time to go after the career of our dreams. And there's a lot of pressure on us to hit that timing right. And I feel like it's so important and valuable to remember that we get to write that perfect timing, and to officially say, you can never be late to your own party. You can never be late to your own party that you're throwing.
That's gonna be my new tagline for life. And it's so true, and you're so right. And I think, especially and talking about timings, the timing of it being released, after we've all come out of this very uncertain time period, and no one really knows whether they're coming or going. So I love that, and I love that that's going to be the theme around the new record, which I am sure there is a lot of people just like me very excited to hear. Before I let you go, I do have 3 questions that I end every podcast with. They are all around threes. The first one, I think I'm going to guess one of your answers already, but 3 albums you can't live without.
Oh my goodness, 3 albums I can't live without. Continuum, John Mayer, obviously. Tapestry, Carole King. The writing on that record is just life-changing for me. And oh my goodness, this is so hard. I would say it's down between 2, but I will say The Woman in Me, Shania Twain. That like formulated me as a human. As a little girl. I was also going to say Jimi Hendrix, but Shania, Shania ticks in about
that. We have, I feel like I'm going to have to put in this situation, because Continuum has been said more than anything else. We've been doing this for 2 years, and it gets said a lot.
Really? That makes me so happy. It deserves that.
I added on an additional question, and it's the toughest question, I think, ever to answer. But if you could only pick one song from that record, what would it be?
It's so hard.
That's why
I've been asked that a lot after just recording it. I mean, Slow Dancing in a Burning Room is such a perfectly written song to me. And you can play that song to so many different people, different ages, different walks of life, different languages, different countries, and it connects to them in so many different ways. So I'd have to say probably that one, with Stop This Train coming as a very close second, because I feel like the message of that song is so relatable, and it's just it's just so powerful. With, I mean, the live version of Belief. This is a terrible question to ask you because I'm so biased to every song on that album, and I'll be like, well, this, but this, but this, but this, but this. But yeah, if I was only given one, probably Slow Dancing.
Yeah, it's funny because it was being said so much. I was like, I need to make this more interesting. I need to challenge people. But then if someone asked me that, I'd, crash and burn with an answer. So the next one, and again, this we might repeat, but 3 songs that you wish you'd have written.
Goodness gracious. I Can't Make You Love Me, Bonnie Raitt. I love that song so much through and through. It is just so perfectly written. Learning about it, it took over like 5 writing sessions or something to complete. And it's just such a good example of like simple writing is sometimes the hardest songs to write, but the most impactful and relatable. I mean, Natural Woman, again, like preach to Carole King, and like just the beauty she has as a writer, and watching how much that song has been recorded, and it just speaks to, God bless, again, like simple writing but great writing.
Yeah.
And then this third one will be a little bit of a left sider, because I could have so many answers to this question as well, but Heart of the Matter, Don Henley. Like, I've been trying to get down to the heart of the matter. It's just so good. When you read the lyric of that song, it is so good, so honest. It all comes down to forgiveness. Who can't connect to that lyric?
Mm-hmm. I love that. And funnily enough, I Can't Make You Love Me is also probably one of the most popular answers that people say. So it just goes to show that good music is great music.
Amen.
And then final question, and again, I'm sure there's so many answers for it, but that's why I narrow it down to 3. But 3 artists or producers or writers that you haven't yet worked with that are kind of bucket list for you, who you'd like to work with.
Ooh, I like this question. I will say Ed Sheeran. I would love to write or tour with Ed. I just have looked up to him and his writing, and who he is as an artist and the way he's performed for so long. Oh gosh, this is so hard. Joni Mitchell, goodness, I would not be the songwriter I am today without Joni Mitchell. And she just got inducted, and she's just like, all hail Joni Mitchell. It would be amazing to write with her one day. And oh man, this is so difficult. And my third choice will be, I mean, I kind of would love to write a song with Shania one day. Like, how cool would that be, right?
That would be amazing. And so possible.
I mean, I won't rule it out. I will definitely keep my fingers crossed. So I will not rule it out.
Definitely. I can see that happening. 100%. That's, yeah. We'll tag her. I mean, you don't need to tag her because you can see her, but all that we can do to help. I know, I love that. I mean, she would be on my bucket list of people to just be in the same room as, so I get that completely. I'm gonna wrap it up there, but I'm so excited. So you're coming over to the UK in just a couple of months. You're obviously touring with the Cadillac 3, which is going to be amazing, and playing the long road, so we're super excited to have you here. Congrats on all the success, and I can't wait to hear more. But thank you so much for sitting down and chatting. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Leah, I just appreciate you so much. Thank you for being such a fan of mine. Thank you for doing such wonderful research and having great questions, and having this podcast. I just appreciate people who appreciate songwriters and lyrics. We are so excited to come back to the UK. My favorite fans in the world. And yeah, it's just going to be such a great year.
It's going to be great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Leah. I appreciate you.